On a cold winter's night, as the Christmas Eve snow started to cover the ground, Laura's life took an extraordinary turn. A car accident catapulted her into an otherworldly experience. She found herself floating above her own body as emergency responders worked to save her. This surreal moment, a glimpse into a realm beyond the physical, forever altered her perception of reality. Since then, Laura's life has been marked by extraordinary experiences. She's had premonitions, such as the chilling moment when she heard a voice declare Sarah dies. Hours later, a neighbor named Sarah tragically passed away. These experiences have deepened her connection to the universe, leading her to believe in a higher power and the interconnectedness of all things. While these abilities have enriched her life, they have also isolated her from others, who often dismiss her as eccentric or delusional. Despite the challenges, Laura embraces her unique perspective. She believes that by letting go of ego and connecting with a higher consciousness, we can unlock our true potential and experience a more profound understanding of the universe. This is Bright Lights Beyond.
What an incredible story for this episode that will be released on Friday the 13th. Very topical, a word that you should remember from last episode. Lexi, that was a really incredible journey. Thank you for sharing Laura's story. I really, really like this story.
Yeah, it's topical for it being a little spooky, but also Christmas Eve is coming up soon. Not this weekend, not next weekend, and not even the weekend before that. It's in the middle of the week.
I know Christmas on a Wednesday feels so wrong, but I'm still looking forward to it. I'm going to be spending Christmas in Chicago, freezing my butt off, but I'm very excited to be with family and loved ones and spend a week away from home, even though I'm going to be missing my dog so much. Lexi, what are your big Christmas plans?
Well, I'm very jealous that you're getting to go to Chicago because 'tis my former home and I love it and I hope you have so much fun, but you are going to be freezing your little tuchus off. My Christmas Eve plans, we have a big Christmas Eve party at my mom's house and then Christmas morning here with my family, and then I go to my dad's and I do stuff over there, and then there's just a lot of presents and joy to be had. So that's what I'm doing. I'm staying here in useless Texas.
Well, know that I will miss the infamous Garrett Christmas party so much. You guys will have to have one for New Year's Eve so I can redeem myself and have some fun with you guys. I'm excited to get into the episode.
So, speaking a little bit about Laura's NDE, it happened on Christmas Eve. And Christmas is actually a pretty special time, not just for people who celebrate the holiday, but this time of year is actually pretty significant. So, I thought it would be cool to look at some origins of Christmas and this time of year. So, if we will venture into the world of origins real quick. Christmas as a global celebration is a blend of both ancient and modern traditions, both secular and religious. At its religious core lies a celebration of Jesus Christ's birth, though the exact date remains a mystery. To unify Christian and pagan beliefs, early Christians strategically chose December 25th, aligning both the winter solstice festival, like Saturnalia, and Yule, to that of Christ's birth. And this move allowed for its integration of both pagan customs into Christian practices. Now, today, Christmas is a time of joy and family and reflection, and secular traditions such as decorating a tree and exchanges of gifts trace their roots to these ancient celebrations like Yule and Saturnalia, symbolizing a renewal and abundance. And beloved figures like Santa Claus, a jolly old soul who brings joy to children worldwide, evolved from that of St. Nicholas, a generous bishop whose legend intertwined with folklore. And because of these different traditions, as we gather with loved ones to celebrate, we partake in centuries-old traditions that continue to evolve, blending the sacred and the secular into a unique, cherished holiday.
Lexi, our history queen, thank you for the quick history lesson and kind of going off of what you talked about. This time of year, the winter solstice is celebrated and it actually marks the shortest day of the year. But it also signifies the return of longer days and kind of the promise of renewed life, which is where hope comes in for this season. Obviously, the theme of hope appears in religious books and also non religious cultures. This is also a time that kind of we reflect on the past year and think about our aspirations for the future. This time of year has almost a dream like quality because of that, where we're really focusing on the dreams of the future, what we want our lives to look like, what we want the next year to look like, which I don't know about you, but I can really feel that in the air this time of year. It's also a time that really shows the power of simple acts of kindness. I know I had some adorable little carolers come to my door. I know I feel like carolers never actually exist in real life. I only see them in movies, but three little kids came to my door the other day and sang to me, and it was like so sweet. I loved, that they were kind of bringing that tradition back. And it was small acts of kindness like that and just, brightening someone's day. We see so many acts of generosity during the holidays that kind of remind us of the inherent goodness in humanity. So I feel like, Lexi, you gave us the history lesson, and we can see how across the board, if you celebrate Christmas or the winter solstice or any other kind of holiday this time of year, it's really, really evolved into, the Christmas spirit or the holiday spirit. It's a real, real thing that we all feel kind of this time of year. So I just wanted to kind of talk about the themes of the year.
Ooh, I'm so excited to learn more about what themes we're going to be talking about today. I wonder if there's, I don't know, a story or something, a tale as old as time story that might be a good way into this world.
Funny you ask, Lexi, because I have the perfect story based on someone we all know and maybe love if you're a big, English nerd like me. So picture this. The year was 1865. Charles Dickens, the literary giant, was aboard the Folkestone Boat Express, a sleek iron horse thundering towards London. As the train hurtled through the English countryside, a horrific accident unfolded. The train derailed, plunging into a chasm, and it was just a scene of twisted metal, shattered glass. Unfortunately, 10 passengers died and 49 were left injured. Dickens was miraculously spared. He emerged from the wreckage and was really a witness to the fragility of life that day. He actually went around helping those that were injured, providing medical assistance where he could, and his community kind of heralded him as a sort of hero. And that experience really left a mark on him. He kind of had peered into the abyss and confronted the stark reality of mortality. His once vibrant world, filled with the hustle and bustle of life, now seemed kind of tinged with a somber hue, and we can see that really reflected in his writings. The accident kind of sparked something within him, and he went on to write with an almost newfound intensity. His later works, such as names we're all familiar with, A Tale of Two Cities and Great Expectations, bear kind of the imprint of this traumatic event, in which he really explores themes of deeper understandings of human suffering and the fleeting nature of existence. And actually, Charles Dickens died only 5 years after that event. And I want to kind of connect Charles Dickens' story with Laura's that we talked about at the beginning of this episode. Even though they are obviously separated by many, many years and different circumstances, they share a really profound connection through their near-death experiences. And I want to dive into some key parallels.
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, I knew that he had like some type of accident. I guess I didn't realize it was so like impactful, I guess, for him. And it's interesting to think that Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, and that's almost like in and of itself one big NDE. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of, I guess, draw parallels of this person seeing his life and what it was like before and after, kind of like in It's a Wonderful Life type beat. But it's interesting that after writing that and being such a prolific author, that he experiences a really big tragedy or, a really big trauma, then changes him for the rest of his life, a lot like Laura did.
Lexi, exactly like you said, it's actually really interesting because Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol before that accident ever happened. And like we were talking about, it still explores the themes of human suffering, life and death, the meaning of life. So it's really interesting. It's almost like he not predicted what would happen later on in his life, but almost already had that connection to the afterlife, the paranormal, mortality, life and death.
That's so interesting. I wonder if it would have been different if he wrote it post his accident.
Right. I wonder how the story might have changed if he went back and revisited or wrote a Christmas Carol sequel after the accident. And fun fact, he actually wrote a Christmas Carol in only 6 weeks. So impressive, especially considering ChatGPT was nowhere near invented. So shout out to Charles Dickens for the original work. That is so iconic. And if you haven't seen A Christmas Carol yet, first of all, what are you doing? Second of all, spoilers ahead, but you should have already seen it by now. But it's so interesting how the main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, sees the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future and really confronts his mortality, his life, what the future looks like for him. And in that way, Scrooge is almost like a little microcosm of, NDEs in and of themselves. He had so many similarities with a lot of NDEs. We talk about, seeing otherworldly figures, being taught lessons, coming back with a renewed sense of life, bright lights, during the incident itself. So, I want to make the bold claim that A Christmas Carol is like one of the earliest stories of a near death experience. I feel like it's not heralded as one, but we should start connecting the dots and really digging into the themes of near death experiences in A Christmas Carol, Lexi. Like, I feel like we just discovered something crazy.
That's what we like to call big brain. We're big brain over here. And I think it's really interesting, especially with what you were talking about, the themes of Christmas and this holiday season of like, the shortest day where it's like the longest night. There's a lot of change and renewal. What I find interesting about both Charles Dickens' life, his Christmas Carol, and then also Laura's NDE is that there's a sense of like things are the same. Like it doesn't necessarily mean that like you are actually changed, but there's a sense of like a new beginning or a renewal or something along those lines that changes you, whether it's physically or mentally or just like a different time of the year. Like there's change and renewal and all those things.
Yeah, and connecting it again back to that original story that we opened with, like it just goes to show the themes of near death experiences that we explore, even though they're separated by time and circumstances, they share a really profound connection. I mean, if you take, Charles Dickens and Laura, who we talked about at the beginning, they both kind of had that glimpse into a different reality, although Laura's was maybe, she physically kind of exited her body, was looking down, experienced reality from that different perspective, a realm kind of beyond the physical plane. I want to argue that Dickens, though he didn't necessarily have that out of body experience, he kind of witnessed the fragility of life and the harshness of death. I mean, he witnessed people die. And same with A Christmas Carol, like Ebenezer Scrooge is out of his body. He time travels. He experiences life in a whole new lens. And so, although in some instances it's more direct, people float above their bodies and can see reality from a different perspective, there's also something to be said for staying in your body and being grounded in the physical, but being able to expand your mental and have something really, really impact you in the way that you see life. It's a near death experience, in a different way, but still one nonetheless for both Charles Dickens and Ebenezer Scrooge.
And you know what I was just thinking? And call me crazy because wouldn't be the first time. Even in like It's a Wonderful Life with George Bailey, like, is that not a near death experience? Or even the Nutcracker, like Clara goes to a different realm. I'm starting to think that every Christmas classic is just an NDE told in a different way.
I don't think you're crazy at all. I think you're so onto something, especially like, yeah, it's interesting because obviously the Nutcracker is also like a children's kind of story in a way. I mean, obviously I enjoy it as an adult, but I'm thinking, Barbie and the Nutcracker, so iconic, and going to see the Nutcracker live. And obviously I watched A Wonderful Life as a kid. It's interesting to think that near death experiences, even though they're not, necessarily called like this is a play or this is a book or this is a story about a near death experience, they seep into children's media. And I feel like maybe in the future or, in the comments of one of our Instagram posts, we need to have a conversation of exploring near death experiences in children's media, whether it's written, visual, whatever, and how that also shapes their perspective of death. So that was a tangent, but I just wanted to point that out. Lexi, you're so right. You're not crazy. Mark this as the beginning of a historical event on how we are calling Christmas movies, Christmas media, the iconic Christmas, stories we love as near-death experiences. And I would be curious to know if our listeners have any more examples to share with us.
Absolutely. If you can think of any other movies that have this that are Christmas themed, obviously. Hello, topical. Let us know. And also, Andy, even though that tangent, I loved it because you're not wrong. Think about Coco, the Coco theory. But it's interesting because I do think that it does shape like our relationship with death and perhaps like seeing ghosts and seeing what life would be like without you or with you, or how things are different with your presence physically not being there. There's something to be said for that. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, it just goes to show, back to the themes we were talking about, like in a way, Christmas is a time to think about life and death. And I feel like it sounds morbid to say it's a time to think about death, but number one, I mean, death is all around us. It happens. It's a fact of life. Number two, it doesn't always have to be, sad. I'm not saying it's never sad. Of course it's sad, but I think we can also reframe death as not this end, not necessarily taking something away, but also giving us lessons that life alone could not teach us. And the end of the year is almost a death of the year. In a way, we're putting the last year to rest. And it's just interesting when we think about time, life, and death and the parallels between it all.
No, I think that you're very right. And like you said, it's not good or bad, but death is kind of all around us. And not just like in the physical sense of like things dying. Like, for example, Samhain, which was like Halloween, it's like the heralding of harvest. So now we have the winter solstice. The Yule, that's when things are not necessarily bringing up, like things are dying, it's changing. So, like, it's just a part of life and it's just an inevitable cycle. And so, I do think that this time of year, while there is a lot of joy, obviously, it's just an entirely different cycle of life, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And this is definitely the tangent episode. But what's a season without a tangent episode? That's when we spark the best ideas and when we can really explore any topic we want and diverge any which way we want.
It's a Christmas miracle, Andy.
It's a Christmas miracle. We went through the ghost of past, present, and future in this episode. This is also a Christmas Carol episode. This is our mini version of a Christmas Carol. Lexi, I want to close with an interesting question, if I do say so myself. If you had to summarize your ghost of Christmas future in one word, what would it be? Hit our listeners with it.
Are you guys ready for this? This is what we call big brain laughter.
Ooh, the best medicine.
The best medicine.
Mine would be abundance. Abundance in every form, not just necessarily money, but love and laughter. So I'm kind of stealing your word, Lexi, but I'm putting it into a different name, abundance.
Yeah, yours is like a little bit better. Mine was just like a hee hee ha ha. Yours is like love and light and friendship and goodness. I'm like, way to make me look like an Ebenezer Scrooge.
I see what you did there. That's why we work, though. You gotta have the good and the bad. No, I'm just kidding. The yin and the yang. But Lexi, this was a super fun episode. This was our standalone episode where we just vibed and we tangented. Ooh, I turned that into a verb. And so, any parting thoughts for us as we leave this episode behind?
I think I would want everyone to have a very Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, and a happy holiday season and a winter solstice season. I also will say, try to look at these next couple weeks as a way of like renewal and change and hope and joy and all of the themes that we spoke about today. Try to look it through those lens and not through the stress of like, oh, my Christmas ham done, or did I get the right present, or any of those things. Try to remember that there is a lot more than just what's on the surface.
Wise words, Lexi. Very wise words.
And Andy, of course, what would be your message to the people?
Well, I just have one last thing to say. As always,
Live life beyond.